Sketchin John Jagel. The side door at 45 Cedar Street in Somerville was always open. It never shut right. You couldn't lock it tight, so you let yourself into the little kitchen where there's a tottering table with its 4 jiggly legs and 3 hard chairs that weren't much for a match. You set your tool bag down and on the floor, and then you go over to the refrigerator where you snatch the coffee from the freezer and crust up the crystals from the can. You're thankful you had bought John some Italian blend, chock full of nuts coffee from the market basket, because he had since been drinking Folgers, because he liked to save the red cans. And you remember when he first tasted the new butt blend, you remember what he said.
"Oh, it's very dark, but it's good. Oh, these days I can't taste anything except bitter."
You find the French press that you washed out yesterday drying upside down on the dowel contraption above the sink. You fill the kettle at the spout and light the stove with match. The pilot light on the old Wedgwood doesn't work anymore and hasn't for at least 2 years now. At least as long as you've been working on John's house, and the entire home always smelled like rotten eggs. You do worry, though, that this whole place could go up at any time, blow up into space every time you strike a match. The stove grow greasy and chunky bit. You do remind yourself that John's house isn't tight, meaning that the windows constantly rattle and you always feel cold sitting next to them. You've told John that he should really get some curtains to block out some of the drafts, and you remember what he said.
"Now, that wouldn't be bohemian, Andrew, now would it?"
You comfort yourself knowing that the leaky windows coupled with the open kitchen door are probably just enough to keep the whole place from going boom. Now it's 9 a.m. John isn't up yet, but you sit anxious you are to begin work on the room. And at 9:15, you hear John cough upstairs and expectorant. And you presume that maybe he had too many. But you remind yourself that he usually doesn't make it downstairs until 9:30 anyway, so maybe. Anyway, you sit at the table some more with your coffee, the scent mingling with the stack of stale soldiers, John's roll-up butts and frisky can ashtray. So you empty them in the market basket paper bag beneath the sink, and then you wait some more for John to come down to that kitchen for the daily half-an-hour chit-chat. Startled, the roiled kettle, watchful you were to remove the whistle. You let it sit a bit, let it come down a bit, and then you guam the lime over the bits, let it sit, the dried shit swells up, soaks up the water, and you're delighted to see that the thick foam is on top of the sieve. Its vapor stokes the room and condenses on the single-hung windows that you recently rehung, because all of them were leaking and the counterweights inside of them were gone. And the ropes inside their pockets for the counterweights had all been completely eaten. By something. Probably by mice, but maybe by some kind of Somerville rat. You can no longer spy the snow outside. On the sill and only fog you can hear the birds at the feeder the trees carrying on outside. Henri must have filled the feeders, you thought. You thunk to yourself, it definitely wasn't John. And then you hear a turn upstairs, a creak in the stairwell, a cough and a spit. And it sounds like spring. You hear his wheeze down the stairs and then follow down the hall. He's followed by his cat Walter. Walter is really a girl cat, an orange stripy, who always comes to the kitchen when John gets up. And she likes to jump up on the counter, waiting for her breakfast, an entire can of salmon friskies. Her roar sounds just as spot on as hoarse as John's.
"Morning,"
he says in slow, labored way.
"Oh, you made coffee." "I don't think we have any cream." "Oh, but we have ice cream. Do you want ice cream?"
John likes his coffee black, but he knows you like yours with cream. Yesterday you threw out the half and half, as over the weekend it went bad and there was no way you were putting that over-a-year-old crystallized Breyer's vanilla ice cream from John's freezer into your coffee. For this very reason, whenever you're at the Brugger's Bagels in Porter Square, You steal some carnation creamers and some of those sugars in the raw, of course, so that you can keep them in the spoon drawer in the kitchen at John's. Just in case. And John asks you,
"Working on the room today, Andrew?"
"Yeah, filling in all the cracks in the plaster and lath."
"Finding any truth in there?"
"What?"
"Sometimes people hit things in the walls. And I thought maybe since this house is nearly 300 years old, that maybe you found something in there. Newspapers, coins, a note. Did you find a note?"
And he makes a gesture like he's writing on something. "No, I haven't found anything like that."
"Let me know if you do, please. Now I'm going to make a soft-boiled egg. Do you want one? It feels like an egg day."
And John pretends to be eating out of a bowl.
"They're good for you. You know, your skin and bones."
"I'm all set," you say, and you check the clock. It's 10 o'clock, and you exit the kitchen and go to the hallway and open the door to the room. It's dark, so you turn on your work light, a halogen dusting of drywall on the ground cover, and your dry nose as you whiff horsehair and rotten egg. "Finally," you say to yourself, "I can begin." It's cold in the room today. John must have turned the heat down or off. You've been down to the basement of Crawl 100 times and bled the oil line. Air gets trapped in there. You also adjusted the thermostat too. You told John there was a loose connection and the thermostat wasn't calling for hot. Then John paused and said with a smile,
"That's a good title for a painting, Andrew. Don't you think? Something calling for hot."
The room you are working on is the downstairs bedroom, one that John hopes to rent out to a roommate.
"It's a period room,"
he calls it, and everything in there needs to be touched. The floors, the OG molding, the cracks in the horsehair plaster, everything. The large hole in the wall from behind the doorknob, the windows and the trim are all around the room, the floors. You often think of what it looked like when you began a month ago. Looked like somebody had died in there. Actually, somebody did. John already had a roommate, Henri, but John says,
"Henri doesn't count."
And he goes on to say,
"Henri is either a complete idiot or an utter genius. He's been making these kitchen racks for dishes for the last 10 years. Every one of them a different design. They all look the same to me. I mean, it's a drying rack. You know, I don't have a dishwasher. We only have like 4 plates. And of course, the set in the dining room, which was Beatrice's, which we don't use."
Beatrice was John's wife, or sort of ex-wife, who died before I met him. He said,
"It was slow."
And after her passing, he said,
"I hung on to the house."
John once told me that when she really got sick, he had to give her an enema once a day. I remember what he said.
"I didn't care for it much. But you know what, Andrew? I think she liked it."
John then knocks on the door to the room, and then he looks in while you're working and says,
"Wow! There's a lot going on in here. Do you want to take a break and have a soft-boiled egg?"
And then he motions again like he's eating out of a bowl. You stop and think to yourself, at this rate, I'm going to be here for like 100 years trying to finish this room. But then you say, okay. And then he asks,
"Oh, can you also make another press of coffee?"
and he motions like he's pressing down on the rod of the French press.
Can you make another press of coffee? Please?
So you make another press and pour some into his mug, and now Henri is downstairs too, and he's sitting at the table. And so you get another mug from the dowel contraption, and you pour him a cup too. Henri lives upstairs in the attic and sometimes comes down when you're here, but you rarely see him. Usually he's upstairs there, working on the design for the drying rack, something John jokes about.
Henri thinks he's going to be big time.
And the first thing John always asks Henri is,
how's it going with the drying rack?
And Henri usually grunts and clears his throat but says nothing. And then John turns to me.
He's Swiss.
Which I find funny. But Henri doesn't really think it's funny, and Henri has something where he's always clearing his throat or he's always trying hard to swallow. Maybe it's the mold or all the dust in John's old house. Whatever it is, Henri always looks uncomfortable. And while he sips at his mug of coffee, he looks at me from behind his greasy glasses, a kind of acknowledgement I take, like a thank you for the coffee, and then he gets up and goes back upstairs. When Henri is gone, John quips,
Henri's a hermit. I actually have no idea what he does upstairs. I've only been up there once, as I was checking in on him, just to make sure he wasn't dead. Maybe today after work you can come to the studio if you're free. Are you free?
John would always ask me if I'm free to go to his studio after working on the room all day. I say all day, but with all these constant interruptions I was getting very little accomplished. But I would always say, yeah, I'm free, because I knew that he always would be looking forward to it.
Maybe we can work on the drawing.
Yeah, I say. Let's do it. At John's studio, you were working on a large portrait drawing of him in charcoal on paper. It was pretty raw because you were drawing him once with John with his shirt off. You had no idea why he took his shirt off as he posed, but as he posed right there in front of you, he looked right into your eyes, defiant, emaciated and sad, because you knew he didn't eat much, except for maybe that egg in the morning, and that is to say, if it was an egg day. But what John lived on most was intake, smoke and drink, and the never-ending aspirations of observing nude women in action and repose. I didn't meet many models that stayed long working for John, probably because he was so crusty and he smoked so much that his skin perfumed a rancid odor of ashtray. John also wore a mustache that was tinted with tar. But you remember when you first met John, when he posted a note on his studio building's wall.
Looking for a studio assistant. Can you build painting racks? Telephone number 617-625-1194.
You remember you called the number when you got home. You left a message on his machine. The voice on the recorder sounded like he was dying. You remember he called you back in the evening and explained that he had these paintings that needed to be stored in the studio because he was tripping over them.
I'm in dire need of some painting racks. I just need some strapping going this way and strapping going that way. You'll see when you come over. Can you come over? Can you come over tomorrow, please? Are you free?
At John's studio, it was filled with paintings, canvases mostly unfinished, some really blurry and some scratched out, but some layered with gloobs of paint, seemingly all searching for some kind of spark. Almost all of the paintings were of female nudes lying in repose, some of them with their genitals exposed, though tastefully, but some were outlandishly raw, trembling like Lucian Freud's. The sawhorse's tabled surface where he worked were caked with paint, and the entire room smelled of turpentine. In fact, the hallway and even the bathroom down the hall smelled like spirits too, and it burned your eyes and throat. You remember you tried to open a window, but they were all painted putty shut. When you arrived that first day, you remember John rolled a drum, and when he lit that match, you thought the whole building might go up. It was a brick building too, and you imagined the roof being blown off, and you just butt bottom rubble in the street. You remember too when he asked you about the building of the painting racks. He asked you if you could fix the windows as they were all stuck.
Someone's painted over them and they're sealed. Also, the weights in them are all fallen in. Their pockets, their ropes chewed by rats. Ever seen a Cambridge rat before, Andrew?
No, I haven't.
They're large. Been here since the beginning. All over the place in this building, and all over the place in this city. Somerville, too. Just too damn packed. With rats.
There wasn't much more to the studio. 2 wobbly chairs, a model stand covered with an oriental rug slicked with spills of turpentine, rubbed paint, and just dusty charcoal. Over by the window was an old lead-painted pine board on 2 bricks, a John Jagel kind of makeshift. Vodka, whiskey, a basket of wine, varnished glasses blotched with grime, some left about, bits of lemon, and a knife. You noticed next to this centerpiece there was a coffee carafe too, a pour-over one like the one your grandmother used to use for her Medaglia d'Oro. There was no such Italian blend or chock-full of nuts coffee found at John's studio, not even close, just the cheapest crap John could buy. You remember him asking you to make him a cup once, and he said,
"The water's down the hall. It's sort of, well..."
The water for the coffee came from the bathroom down the hall, which had a sink. It was also all streaked with oil paint because John washed his brushes in them. And when you brought the carafe back, you looked for some kind of burner or hot plate, and there was none.
"Just put it on the radiator, Andrew. We'll have to wait. In the meantime, do you want a drink? I'm having one."
"No, thanks. I guess I'll wait for the coffee."
"Suit yourself. But be careful, Andrew. You may have to watch out for the mice. Doo-doos. If you have a shot of this, you won't mind as much. Trust me. Do you trust me?"
"All right, I trust you. I'll have one."
"What would you like? What do you prefer?" "I have vodka, whiskey, and wine." Whiskey it is."
At John's studio, you never had any of your stolen sugars or creamers from the Brugger's Bagels in Porter Square. You just drank whatever coffee there was, and you drank the coffee
black.